There we go. Now I can officially welcome everyone to CI104 online. Session 6 today is June 16th. 2022. Hope everyone is doing well this evening. I'm a little casual today, so apologies in advance. I got the chapeau on, but matching chapeau, I might add, but a little casual, a little warm here in the North Coast. And I'm guessing it might be a little warm where you are too. They called it a heat dome. So it's always something more and more descriptive to talk about our weather, right? Polar vortexes, and they named storms, and now we got a heat dome to deal with. But it's a little warm, and I love my house. Got a beautiful, beautiful house, but it was built in the 1920s, and which means it has steam heat, and which also means that it does not have air conditioning in most rooms. Now we have window units in the bedroom, so I can at least sleep at night. And then when we got our dog, we had to get a mini split for the dog. I lived in the house for 20 years and sweated my rear end off through 20 summers. We had the dog 2 days, and the dog was so third day, come home from work, heating the cooling in my driveway, 3 trucks, putting in a mini split for the dog. But I do like it. I do like that in the kitchen and family room. But this room that I'm in right now, my office, is not air conditioned. So apologize in advance for the casualness. I hope you are all comfortable physically and also mentally in a comfortable place. Give more time. Yeah, something like that. Seriously, get a dog in this room. It'll be a mini split in here magically. That's right. Maybe that's the answer, Jeff. Just get more dogs. I didn't even think about that. I need you for an advisor. Good deal. Hope everyone's doing well. Like I said, physically as well as mentally. We're at the halfway point, gang, right? 5 sessions in the rearview mirror. We got 5 sessions to go, and hopefully having a good time. This is a little bit of preview of previous 101 concepts, but like I said, the idea is to continue to take this further and further, and we will do that certainly in this case. Certainly in the next case study 4, and then case study 5 really kind of is a culmination and does a real nice job, I believe, in wrapping things up. So the fun is just starting. More to come. Speaking of more to come, let's talk about what is cooking this evening. We will loop back. I'm going to take a look at activity 4.1 and 4.2, which is an important calculation to understand for a few different reasons. So we will make sure everyone's comfortable with that calculation, effective yield / borrower's cost of funds. We will cover the module 4 self-assessments, which are also really important, I think, in preparation, not just for the exam, but also for real life, a lot of real life applications, as well as case study applications and those self-assessment questions. And then we'll jump into case study 3. Test 1 and 2, 3 and 4, we'll talk about that, but we're going to certainly review kind of the key points and one of the tools that was given to us to help kind of automate the data entry and data input. So I'm going to make sure everyone's comfortable with that. And then we will wrap up this evening doing an introduction of capital accumulation, so you can kind of understand where it falls on the scale of tools that are at our disposal. We're not going to get into capital accumulation tonight. We will certainly on Tuesday, but we will certainly at least introduce it and kind of talk about the hierarchy and where it lives. All right, before we get rolling, any questions, any issues that anyone's having with technology, with understanding where we are in the course, anything specifically that you've come across so far in any of the material? It's water, gang. See, bubbly. It's Thirsty Thursday, just not yet. Thirsty Thursday once we wrap up class, then it's Thirsty Thursday. All right, good deal, good deal, good deal. Seeing none, hearing none, off we go. So this is activity 4.1.4.2. This is on page 436 if in the hard copy, and PDF starts on page 184. This is a really important concept. You were introduced to this concept in CI 101. So in module 6 of CI 101, right around page 636, you were introduced to this concept. We spent a fair bit of time in this concept in CI 101. And if experience and history is any indicator of truthfulness, most of the time students have to remember some of this concept specifically as far as recall. I guess as we get older, the recall gets a little tougher, but it's a really important concept. It's a really important concept for purposes of the exam. For sure, you'll have 2 questions on this concept. So if you're doing math in your head, 40 question total, to here, there's some importance there. You will see it again on the comprehensive exam, and it is woven throughout these last, not case study 4 as much, but certainly this case study. And then when we loop back around to the final case study, this concept is interwoven in those case studies and helping understand a more conceptual why this is important. The calculation itself isn't that hard. It's these 3 steps. It's a 3-step process. That's how to do the calculation. The impact, the implication of the calculation is what the case studies will bring out. And we'll certainly talk about that once we dig into case study 3. All right, so let's talk about the calculation itself. 3 steps. First step, solve for payment. So this is a loan problem. Okay, so this is a debt if I am a borrower or a lender, because you may remember, whether you're the borrower or you're the lender, it's just what side of the table you're sitting on, right? The calculation's basically the same. It just depends on, am I receiving the loan, receiving the money, or am I giving the loan, money moving away from me? So that's the only difference is sign convention. The way the calculations play out is the exact same. So this is a 3-step process. So this is the one time, or one of the few times, where you do not want to clear out the financial calculator as you move from step to step. Certainly as you move from one problem to a completely separate problem, absolutely. Clear it out, when in doubt, clear it out, flush out all the stuff that may be in those macros. But in this particular instance, when you're doing this type of problem, as you move from step to step, you do not want to clear the calculator out. You want to carry everything in that calculator and then simply change one thing and resolve for something else. And this is exactly how this is the process to do it, step by step. First step, solve for payment. This is something you learned in the first day of your ci101 experience, solving for a loan payment. The second step, if there is a balloon, we want to change N to reflect when that loan's being paid off, and resolve for FV. The only time at this second step won't happen is if that loan's going to be held to the full maturity. So if it's a 25-year loan with no term, with no balloon, that loan, if the borrower doesn't pay it off, that loan is going to be held for its full maturity. And once you make that last payment, the loan balance is going to be 0. You make that last payment, that 300th payment in the 25th year, and the loan payoff will be 0. If that loan is paid off any time prior to it being fully amortized, there will be a balance. So if it's 25-year amortization with a 5-year payoff, if that loan's being paid off at the end of the 5th year, there's going to be an FV at the end of that 5th year, right? There's going to be a loan balance. There's going to be something due on that loan at the end of that 5th year. Now, that loan balloon can come from one of 2 places. It can be what I call an involuntary balloon. An involuntary balloon is the lender saying, Mr. Borrower, you will pay this loan off at the end of the 5th year, at the end of the 60th month. That's how most of us think about a balloon, right? It's in the loan documents, it's in the mortgage agreement. We know that going in, that come 60th payment, that loan's going to need to be paid off in full. Okay, that's an involuntary, don't have a choice. It could also be voluntary. Maybe that loan has a balloon at the end of the 60th month, but we choose to sell that asset at some point prior. We choose to sell it at the end of the 3 years, at the end of the 36th month. Well, we just created a balloon, right? We voluntarily, well, I say voluntarily, but we voluntarily, it's not the bank telling us to pay it off. It's us creating the balloon, creating the payoff by virtue of selling the underlying collateral, because every loan that ever existed has something called a due on sale clause. And a due on sale clause means if you hit the sell button, you got to pay the mortgage back. Okay, so balloons can be created either way. Either we create it by selling, or the bank creates it by embedding it into the loan document. So whenever that loan is paid off, or you're projecting that loan is going to be paid off, you need to calculate FV at that point in time. Unless you're going to hold it the whole maturity, then, if you hold the loan the entire amortization period, which doesn't happen on the commercial side. The only time I've seen a loan that didn't have a term is if it was a pension fund. Pension funds are typically 15-year term, 15-year amortization. They call them 15-15s. So those loans don't have a payoff, but any other commercial loan will typically have an early payoff. So whenever that happens, solve for FV. That's second step. Third step, change PV to reflect costs and then resolve for I/YR. And so this third step a lot of times gives students some heartburn. Say, why am I doing that? Why am I changing PV? Why am I reducing it downward? There is not a loan that exists that is not going to cost the borrower something up front. And lenders have a bunch of different terms that they use to reflect these costs. In the CCIM world, we generically call these points. Now, some of you may think, especially if you're residential, especially if you're back in the old days, and like in the 1880s and 1990s, when points in the residential loan used to be a really common way of buying down your rate. You used to be able to pay something up front, and in exchange for paying that, whatever that amount was up front, you could buy down your rate. So instead of borrowing at 8.5%, you could pay $2,000 or $3,000, and your rate would be reduced to 8.25%. So that was pretty common. Points in that regard have kind of gone away because rates are so low now. But more importantly, that's not what we're talking about in this conversation. CCIM refers to these generically as points. I slightly alter it and I call it origination fees or origination costs. The lender's going to charge you something to make that loan. Right? They're going to charge you something, some amount, and typically it's reflected. A point is typically generically means 1% of the outstanding loan amount. So if it's a $800,000 loan and it's going to cost 1 point to secure upfront, that's 1% of 800,000. Okay, if it's $1 million loan and it's going to cost 1.1%, that's 1% of $1 million. So it just depends on, but that's what we refer to when we say points, 1% outstanding loan amount. Yeah, it might be coming back, right? What's old is new again, right, Bryce? What old is new again? And as rates continue to climb up, I think we may see the residential version of buying down the rate come back, but that's not what we're talking about here. Okay, so those are 3 steps. Graphically, this is what it looks like. First step, solve for PMT. So this is stated terms and conditions. So this, in this example on page 4.36, $100,000 loan, 25-year AM, monthly payments, interest 8%. That's the stated or the nominal interest rate, the contracted interest rate of the mortgage, 8%. We're borrowing $100,000. Step number 1, solve for PMT. Okay, I'm thinking 771.82, I think is what the number is. Okay, second step, we solve for a balloon if it exists. Now, I think in the first activity 4.1, there is no balloon. It states very clearly in the problem that the loan's going to be held to maturity. Okay, so we don't have to do that second step because at the end of the 25th year, when this loan is held to maturity, the FV is going to be 0. So we already have the correct number in FV, so we don't have to do the second step. Now we go to the third step. Third step is reduce PV by the amount of the costs or the points. So in this example, it was 2 points, 2%. So 2% of $100,000 is $2,000. We knock that off the $100,000 original loan amount, and we resolve for I/YR. So as we move from step 1 to step 2, and then step 2 to step 3, we don't clear anything out. We're just changing something and resolving for something. Now that 98,000, let's talk about that a second, because sometimes students can't get their head around that. So here's the idea. I walk into my favorite neighborhood lender and I get a $100,000 loan. So he hands me a big old bag, 100 grand, and I start walking out. And the lender says, "Oh, time out. Hold on, cowboy. 2 points. Remember, 2%. That's how much we agreed to that you were going to pay for this loan." Well, okay. So I reach into the bag and I pull out 2 grand and I give it to the lender. There's just $2,000 that he collects up front. What's left in my bag? Well, what's left in my bag is $98,000. And so people say, well, okay, what if you reach in your pocket and pull out $2,000? Okay, I reach in my pocket and pay $2,000. One way or another, the lender is getting $2,000 up front. No matter if I reach under the bag or I reach into my pocket or I reach into my checkbook or I tell my wife, hey, can you give the lender 2 grand? Doesn't matter. One way or the other, the lender only has $98,000 outstanding because they collected $2,000 up front. By virtue of originating that mortgage, the lender earns 2 grand up front. So the only skin they got in the game at that point is $98,000. because they got 2 of it up front, time period 0. Now, notice what happens to PMT though. I don't go back and readjust or recalculate PMT based on this new PV of 98,000. No. PMT was solved all the way back in the first step based on 100,000. So the PMT stays at 100,000. The PV decreases. What has to happen to yield given that situation? Which way does yield have to go? Is yield going to go up or down, or is it not be changed? What do you think? If I change PV downward, PMT stays the same. What has to happen to I/YR? Got to, right, Bryce? Absolutely, got to go up. Now you may be saying, okay, I see the graphic, but can you run through this on the CCN financial calculator? Because that's how you're going to ultimately do this, is on the financial calculator. So let's run through that real quick. Just make sure everyone is in a good place. I thought I was going to have my calculator up. Oh, no, wait, I have it here somewhere. Where's my calculator? You got on one of these screens. I pulled it up somewhere. There it is. There's that dirty dog. Okay, let's drag this over. Little standard deviation problem I had going on there. How about that? This is steady diet tab 3, gang. Steady diet tab 3. Clear it out since I'm starting a new problem. Okay, I'll make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so first step, always stated terms and conditions. So this is a 25-year amortization, monthly payments. So N is 300. Interest, stated interest rate of the loan, nominal interest rate, 8%. Present value, I'm borrowing $100,000. I am going to take the lender's position. So I'm going to enter this in as a negative. The number, the percentage won't change, whether I'm taking the lender's position or the borrower's position, it doesn't change. In this instance, I'm taking the lender's position. I am providing someone, I'm shoving $100,000 over towards someone. So $100,000 is leaving me, going toward the borrower. And I want to know what PV is at the end of the 25th year, the 300th month, FV will be 0. And so I am solving for PMT 771.82, Shazam. So that's first step. Second step, in this instance, this loan is being held, the problem says, to maturity. So at the end of that 25th year, at the end of that 300th month, FV will be 0. So I don't have to do the second step because FV is already 0. So I can skip that second step or jump right over, go to the third step. Third step is reduce PV by the loan costs. So this loan's costing me 2%, 2 points. 2% of $100,000 is $2,000. So the lender is collecting that when? Up front. So the lender doesn't have $100,000 outstanding up front because they are collecting $2,000 of it. So if the lender gets $2,000 at time period 0 when that loan is originated, that means they only have $98,000 outstanding. Everything else stays the same. Solve for I/YR, and as Bryce said, Shazam. My 8% loan just climbed to a yield of 8.24%. Questions on the concept, on the theory?
Can you show the part about the balloon?
You know it, Bryce. Absolutely. That's exactly where I'm going. That's exactly where I'm going. Now, as I move from step to step, keep it in. Don't clear anything out. As I move from problem to problem, then you want to wipe the slate clean. Clear it out. And I'm going to go to Bryce's question. What about that balloon? What if you have a balloon in the second step? Okay. First step is always the same. Solve for PMT at the stated terms and conditions. This is a 25-year loan. The nominal or stated rate is 8%. I am taking the lender's position again. I'll take the borrower's position. How about we take the borrower's position? Let's say I'm getting 100,000. Okay. I'm solving for PMT at the end of the 25th year for purposes of solving for payment. My FV is going to be 0, fully amortized, and I solve for PMT. 771.82 now is negative because it's leaving me. I get 100 grand. I got to give back 771.82 every month. Okay? Now, if I have a balloon, like I do on 4.2, 10-year balloon, this loan has to be paid off at the end of the 10th year, I do have to do the second step. FV is 0 only at the 300th month. At any point prior to that 300th month, there's going to be a loan balance, right? There's going to be something unpaid. That loan's not going to be fully paid off. So what I want to know is, at exactly the 10th year, when this loan is due, at the end of the 10th year, what's the loan balance? How do I figure that out? Keep everything in here. I change years to 10. So that first cell, change years to 10, which changes N to 120. And I resolve for FV. So when I hit that FV, in that box, it says I have an $80,762.61 balance. So that's how much I'd have to pay the lender. That's how much would be outstanding at the end of the 10th year when this loan term hits. Okay, that's the second step. Only doing that because the loan term is at some point prior than the fully amortization period. Third step, same, reduce PV by the costs. So because I'm taking the borrower's perspective, borrower's going to get $100,000, but it's going to cost that borrower $2,000 up front. So that means that borrower really is only getting effective use of $98,000. Yeah, they got 100, but they had to shell out 2,000 to get it. Effective use of 98,000. Click on I/YR, and now I see that that 8% loan is really costing this borrower 8.32%. So you can see a couple of things come out. Number one, the percentages aren't going to change. Whether I take the borrower's perspective or the lender's perspective, the sign convention changes. FV is changed, Bryce, because if you think about this, the perspective I'm taking is the borrower's perspective. The borrower is receiving the money, PV, positive, but at the end of that loan term, they got to give something back, negative. Give to get, right? So that's why that FE is negative, because I'm taking the borrower's perspective. I would have been taking the lender's perspective, negative PV, FE would have been positive. So that's what's going on with FV. So hopefully that's clear. But the bigger picture is, as we went from 4.1, our I/YR was 8.24%. When we were holding this loan the entire time, it jumped to 8.24. If I have a 10-year balloon, still 25-year AM, but now that loan is being paid off at the end of the 10th year, it hiked up to 8.32%. Just for kicks, let's do a 5-year term. Okay, let's do the same setup. So it's 25-year amortization for purposes of figure out the loan payment. 8% interest is the nominal or stated rate. I'm going to take the borrower's perspective again, 100, not a million. Borrower's perspective, FV at the end of the 25th year is 0. Solve for PMT, 771.82. Shazam. Now, in this instance, let's assume that it has a 10-year term, but I sell at the end of the 5th year. Okay, if I sell it, I'm creating a balloon. That's a voluntary balloon. What's the balance going to be? What am I going to have to pay the banker at the closing table? Well, at the end of the 5th year, solve for FV, I'm going to have to choke up $92,273.66. So of that $100,000 up front, I've only paid off a little less than $8,000 of principal. It's going to have a loan balance of $92,273 if I sell it at the end of the 5th year, or if the loan has a 5-year balloon or whatever. Okay, so that's the second step. Third step, same. Reduce PV by that loan cost, $2,000. So $100,000 minus 2,000 means that borrower is going to have 98,000 at in proceeds, and I solve for I/YR. And now 8.51%. So you can see, as we've gone from a fully amortized loan, 8.24, to a loan with a 10-year term, 8.36, to a loan with a 5-year term, 8.51, that effective cost of funds gets higher and higher and higher the shorter the amortization period is. So as step 2, as the balloon gets shorter and shorter, the effective cost from step 3 is going to be higher and higher and higher. Questions? Now, again, we'll talk about why it's important to understand this once we get into the meat of case study 3. But for right now, and for purposes of the exam, you need to know how to calculate this. You need to know the 3 steps. Stated terms and condition, always, always, always. Clear? Solve for PMT at the stated terms and conditions. Step 2, if there's a balloon, change years to whenever that loan is being paid off. Resolve for FE. If there's no balloon, it's already got 0. That's what we want. Go to step 3. Step 3, change PV to reflect the costs. Resolve for I/YR. Question, okay? All right. Okay, let's get into the self-assessments because there's some good things in here as well. We'll see another one of these problems that pops up. I think question 3 or 4 is another effective cost of funds question, but there's some good, real good questions in here as well. All right, first question. An investor purchases an investment, 4 million in equity, 16 million in debt and financing. What is the leverage ratio? We didn't talk about leverage ratio. It's a metric that's not used a whole lot anymore. It's around. It's around. There's some smaller, kind of some smaller S&Ls and smaller thrifts will use a leverage ratio. What do you think? What's the leverage ratio of this particular deal? Yeah. Yep. That's one way to express a price, certainly 1 to 5. Sometimes I'll just call it 5. So what the leverage ratio tells both borrower and the lender is how much skin does the borrower have in the game? For every dollar of value, how much equity is the borrower bringing? So in this question, I'm looking at this thing, there's $20 million of value, right? 4 million in equity, 16 in debt, add them together, $20 million. The borrower is bringing 4 million to the party in equity. So 20 million divided by 4 million will equal 5. So for every dollar, another way of saying is just what Price said, for every dollar of equity, there's $5 of value. So obviously what a lender would like to see is a lower number, right? If that number were 2, right, leverage equity, a leverage ratio of 2, that would mean for every dollar of value, there's $2 of value. Or for every dollar of equity, there's $2 of value. The investor would have a lot more skin in that game. Right? So generally, lenders like to see a lower leverage ratio because the lower the leverage ratio, the more equity, the more skin the borrower has in the game. The higher it is, the less skin, the more that the debt's bringing to the party. Again, it's not a real common measure. We're going to keep it. We're in the process of rewriting this as we speak, this class. And we just had the debate on this very topic, should we keep it in? Should we keep it out? And we decided to keep it in. It's a pretty easy metric, but we're adding a couple others. There's some others. Those of you that play in the debt game, you'll know there's something called debt yield. that's a big one too. So we've added that. We've added some other ones, but anyways, questions on this? All right. How about this one? The question above, what is the LTV? Much more common metric. Loan to value, LTV. There we go. Thank you, Bryce. 80%. So LTV is simply loan as a percent of value. Loan as a percent of value. So this particular property has a $16 million loan projected. And it has $20 million of underlying value. And there it is. Loan divided by underlying asset value, 80%. So the lender is bringing 80% to the party. Fine. Next question. Lender requires debt service coverage ratio of 1.25 for a 7.5% 20-year monthly payment loan. NOI is 175,000. What is the allowable loan amount rounded down to the nearest thousand? Who wants to help me with this one? What the heck am I going to do? Because gang, you are going to see this on the exam. There is, whoopsie daisy. There is no doubt that you're going to see a question that looks eerily similar to this. What are you going to do? Gosh, that's twice I did that. Sorry, gang. My mouse is a little sensitive today. Must be the heat. What do you think? How am I going to solve this?
Would you solve for payment?
Yeah.
And then multiply it by 1.25? I'm sorry. No, you would.
It's a two-step dance. You got it. It's a two-step dance. Let's think. You're close, Joe. You were hitting around it. What do I do? How do I get there? How do I get to a loan amount with all the pieces, parts that are given to me? NOI gross down. Okay, so that $175,000 comes into play. How's it come into play, Joe? You cut out on us. Go. Yeah, we're still having audio problems with you, Joe, but Camille said solve for ADS first. There we go.
I could do it.
There we go. Okay, go ahead. Hit it, Army.
Do the 175 divided by 1.25. That's going to give you the amount of effective, protect them.
Yep.
And then put in your interest rate, 7.5%, and hit solve.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to do it right here in this calculator. Okay. Because you
I
can.
didn't use a calculator. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. But I can do it right here in this calculator. I could do it on the side. So we can do it. So what Army said is take that 175,000 divided by 1.25, right? To
put in your periods, obviously,
Yeah, you got to put in your periods. Yeah. Yep.
20 years times 12 months.
Yep.
And take your interest rate and divide it by 12 because it's a monthly rate.
So you don't have, because this calculator will do that for you, Army. So
Okay.
if you're using an older school calculator like the 12C, you do have to do that. But this calculator, whatever is in P/YR, it'll do the appropriate thing to interest. So we don't have to worry about that. Okay, so the first step, two-step dance. We got to do something with that NOI. So 175,000 divided by 1.25. Okay. That's, as someone said, who said that, Bryce, grossing it down, right? So we're saying, okay, $175,000 is the number, but we need to reduce it in order to have a 25% cushion. So how do we reduce? We need to know what is 25% less than 175,000. How do we do that? Divide it by 1.25. So there's the number. $140,000 is the maximum annual debt service that income will support given the 25% cushion. The NOI is 125% of the maximum debt service. Put that another way. Okay. So 140,000 is the maximum debt that we can have given $175,000 income and the need for a 25% cushion. Now, is that going to get me there for PMT? I got to do something else with that PMT input? What do you think? Can I just put in the rest, put in the rest of my terms? So this is 20 years, 7.5%. Can I just plug in those terms? Or do I need to do something else with that PMT? There we go, Bryce, because like Camille said, that's ADS, annual debt service. When we put it in the calculator, we need to now also divide it by 12 to put it on a monthly basis because this loan is being repaid monthly, not annually. So 175,000 divided by 1.25 gets me the annual debt service. Divide that by 12, that gives me the monthly payment. And now I can put in the rest of the terms, and I'm gonna have to drag this down here real quick. It is a 20-year loan at 7.5%. So 20 years, 12 payments per year, 7.5% interest. PV is what I'm trying to solve for. FV is soon to be 0. Solve for PV and Shazam. There it is. There's the maximum loan amount. So I need to back into that loan amount. The problem will give you the NOI or the ability to figure out NOI. The problem will give you the debt service coverage ratio to use, and it'll give you the amortization period, and it'll give you the interest rate. So it's just a question of taking that NOI, dividing it by whatever the debt service coverage ratio is, and then divide that by 12, enter that in the PMT, plug in the years, plug in the interest, solve for PV, back into the loan amount. Questions on that, gang? Good. Okay. All righty. Moving along. There's an effective cost of funds question. And this is how it'll look. 7%, 20-year monthly payment, 10-year call, loan costs are 2 points, 2%, $3 million. Drag this over. Drag my calculator over. Come on, Doug. Let's see if I can line these up nicely. Okay, so this is the tool that I'm going to use, right? I'm going to use this tool, tab 3, to solve this. And this is that 3-step dance. What's the first step? Well, I'll always clear it out. What's the first step? What do I do first? What do you think? Solve for PMT. Always, 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 always. Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Bryce. Solve for PMT. Stated terms and conditions. So this says this is a 20-year amortization, 12 payments per year. Stated interest rate, nominal interest rate, 7%. Present value is $3 million. FV is assumed to be 0, and I'm going to solve for PMT. Okay, so there's my first step. Second step. Do I need to take that second step of this dance? What do you think? What do I do next? There we go. Solve for FV. Because this loan isn't going to be hanging around for all 20 years, right? There is a 10-year call. So this loan is going to be paid off at the end of the 10th year. The balance is not going to be 0 at that point. It is going to be something greater than 0. How do I know what the balance is? Keep everything in, change years to 10, and resolve for FV. So that is the loan balance at the end of the 10th year. A little bit over $2 million. Okay, now what? What's my third step? There we go, Joanne. I'm not getting, thank you, thank you, thank you. Solve for I/YR, exactly right. Adjust PV because this particular borrower is not getting 3 million bucks. They're getting 3 million bucks, but it's costing them 2 points, 2% of that original loan amount. So there's a couple different ways to do it. I can pick up my calculator and I can say $3 million times 0.02 equals 60 grand, and then minus subtract that from 3 million. I could do it right in here, right? Because what's really happening is this borrower is getting 98%. Oops. 98% of 3 million. It's costing them 2 points. So 3 million is 100%. They're getting 98% of that number. So either way, it'll get you to the same number, right? We need to knock 60 grand off that. We need to knock 2% of $3 million, which is $60,000. We need to knock that off the 3 million bucks as PV. That is the PV that this borrower is really getting effective use of. And now I solve for I/YR, and I see that that 7% loan is really costing me as a borrower 7.32%. Questions? Okie doke. Back out of the way. What's next? What's next? What's next? So, after tax cost of funds, this is a before tax cost of funds. So the after tax cost of funds is simply reducing that 7.32% by the borrower's effective tax rate, ordinary tax rate. So the problem says it borrows in the 35% tax bracket. So I need to reduce 7.32 down by 35%. I need to know what's 35% less than 7.32. So the easiest way to do that is simply take the reciprocal of it. Okay, so 65%, if uncle's getting 35%, I'm keeping 65%. So I need to know what 65% of 7.32 is. So I can simply go over here to tab 9. That'll be the easiest place for me to illustrate that, clear this crap out, put in 7.32 is my before tax cost of funds. And I'm going to get 65% of that. So 4.76 is the after-tax effective cost of funds. So the math is pretty straightforward. All you're doing is reducing the before tax cost of funds by whatever the investor's tax bracket is. Okay, I want to reduce 7.32 by 35%. How do I do that? Multiply it by the reciprocal, multiply it by 65%, 0.65. So 4.76 is the after-tax cost of funds. Now, that's the math. Questions on the math before I drag that out. Questions on the math. Probably thinking, okay, why? Why would I ever use that? And that's what the next question asks. What's the importance of that? I'm gonna punt. I'm gonna say, let's put that on hold. Let's put that on pause. When we get into case study 3, we will show you why you need to know this, what the importance of the after-tax cost of funds is. Because if I just said it here, you give me one of these. Huh? Huh? But if you see it, see the math and see it illustrated, it'll make much more sense. So I'll come back to that one. I will come back to that one. Questions on the math though? Okie dokie. Okie dokie. Let's jump into hidden lakes without financing. So this was task 3.1. So for homework, I asked you to do tasks 3.1 and 3.2. Hidden lakes without financing, and then hidden lakes with financing. So unleveraged and then leveraged. And for each time, each look, I asked you to do before and after tax cash flow analysis, before and after tax alternative cash sale analysis. Once you did those 2 things, you could calculate IRR, you could calculate NPV, you could calculate all sorts of things and answer all sorts of questions. So the crux of it was completing those workbooks. Now, the nice thing is we have this little tool that's available to us. Leverage analysis version 2.5. So I introduced this to you on Tuesday. So hopefully you all had a chance to play around with this tool. This shows us the inputs. So this tool has several tabs. I'm going to drag this tab over here. I'm going to drag, this is the live, this is the actual workbook. I am on tab 1, which is the inputs. And there's a couple little tricks. We need to click the down arrow first. Okay, that's one trick. Select what you want, if you want percent or if you want actual dollar amount. So that's the first trick. The second trick was that thing I showed you with the, so you don't have to go through and figure out everything. I think it was, what was it, 1,620? What was the year one NOI? 1,679. 1,679. So if I put 1,679,200 into potential rental income, but then I don't erode it, I put in no other income, I put in no vacancy, I put in no operating expenses, because we know that's the NOI, right? That's given us for Hidden Lakes, year one NOI, that's given us 1,679,200. Don't put anything else in. When I go to the cash flow analysis worksheet, Shazam, it drops down to exactly where we want it to end up. So I put it into potential rental income, but I use this little trick because I don't want to go back. Could I have put potential rental income in the whole number and then take 7% vacancy of the local and nothing of the national and then the expenses and all the rest of that stuff? Sure, that's brain damage. It's given me the NOI. I know I want it to end up in line 7. How do I get it there? If you put it in line 1 and then just don't do anything to it, don't erode it, don't reduce it by anything, it'll drop right down to where you want it to be. Okay, so that was a little trick along the way that you had to do that made your life a lot easier. But after that, it was just a question of plugging these, making sure you have all these cells plugged in properly. And this is what that should look like, right? 103,000 square feet, 20% land, 80% improvements. It's a non-residential, so that'll automatically calculate 39 years. Line 12, acquisition price. Line 13, acquisition costs. Line 15, that little trick, making sure you have total amount per year selected in the drop down, plug in the NOIs out to 6 years, put in the tax information for the owners, tax bracket, and then a disposition cap rate and a disposition price. A lot of times students will forget line 31. So if it's blank, it'll only do 1 year and then it won't go out anymore. So if your analysis was stuck at 1 year and you were getting all these hashtag NUMs in your calculations, that's why. That's more than likely why, is line 31 didn't have 5 years. Okay, so you went through it and you did all that work and it did the heavy lifting for you. So we didn't have to go through kind of analysis paralysis. Okay, now we're going to have some fun. Time for a group activity. So here is what I would like. How many we got in here? Good, I chose a pretty good number. So we got 13 minus me is 12. 3 groups, that'll be 4 in a group. And here's what I would like you to do. I would like you to answer some, or not answer some questions, but be able to come back and explain some things from the resulting workbooks that are created for you. So group number 1, and I haven't created the groups yet. Let me create the groups here real quick so I can tell group number 1 who they are. That'd help, right? Breakout rooms 3, we're going to create automatically. Okay, group 1. Army, Bryce, Justin, and Logan. That is our first group. What I would like you to do is tell me how the value of the improvements is calculated. So value of the improvements on the second tab, that will show up on the cash flow analysis worksheet. It'll show up in that cost recovery box. There'll be a number plugged in there for value of the improvements that this workbook will figure out for you. What I want you to do is tell me how the workbook did it. What were the calculations that were involved in order to figure out the value of the improvements? Okay. Group number 2 is Alden, Jeff, and Joe. I would like you to tell me on that same tab, tab 2, cash flow analysis worksheet, where the cost recovery, line 10, came from, how the workbook calculated line 10. Okay. And then group 3, Julian, Ryan, and Walker. I would like you to go to the next tab, the next sheet, alternative cash sales worksheet, and tell me where line 9, depreciation taken, where that number came from, how that number was calculated. Okay, so someone should have done this. Hopefully it won't take you long if you didn't do it to go back and just re-input the input. There's the input. There's the input. There's the input screen. Okay, so it won't take you to, hopefully it won't take someone if they have it to go back and recreate this. And I'll tell you a secret. If anyone downloaded the case study resources, the solution set is done for you. So this is all done for you. So you can just grab that. I don't care. What I wanted you to do is be able to reverse engineer it and tell me how it was calculated. And again, what am I talking about? How it was calculated. So here's the workbook. Group 1. What I want to know is right here, that box right in the middle. Where's my annotate? This box right here. Right there. I want to know specifically the value of the improvements, that first box, value of the improvements. There'll be a number. Once you put all your inputs in, a number will show up there. I want you to tell me where that number came from. Okay. Group number 2, I think you guys were depreciation. Clear this out. Excuse me. Choking all of a sudden. Hate when that happens. So depreciation, I'm looking at line 10. So right here, there's line 10. There'll be numbers all the way across for line 10, cost recovery of improvements. I want you to tell me where that number came from, how that number was calculated. And then group 3, go over to the next tab, tab 3, sale. And I want you to tell me where the number that shows up right here came from. Cost recovery taken. There'll be a number in this cell right here. I want you to tell me where that came from, how that was calculated. Questions on the task at hand. Okay. Hearing no questions, I am going to put you in your groups. I'll give you 10 minutes. You should be able to get this done in about 10 minutes.
Where do you get this Excel?
Where do I get this Excel? So it's in a couple different places here. You know what? I'll make it easy. So you probably did it. Hopefully you did it for homework. Hopefully you uses the. You may not have. It was on the course site. It was it was in a bunch of different places. Let me make it really easy for everyone, because I'm in a generous mood tonight. I am going to plug in the actual solution set, so you don't even have to. Oh, I'm going to cut some of the time off I'm going to give you though. But let me find the where is it? Hold on. It'll be worth it. Yeah, way too many folders. Factor courses 104 resources, case study 3, solutions, and hidden links. There we go. It is in the chat box. Okay. Oh, did I send it to? You know what? I'm sorry. I sent it to just Justin. Justin, you got it. Even though you're in a cafe, let me send it to everyone. There we go. So it should be in the chat box. If you have your chat box open, you have the leverage analysis workbook. It is completed, so you don't have to worry about the inputs. So now you can go straight to your tab, whatever your assignment is, tab 2 or tab 3. And I want you to value engineer this thing and tell me, how was that number calculated? Okay. Questions? So since we did the heavy lifting for you, I'll give you 5 minutes. So 1:30, I'll call everyone back. You should be able to do this in 5 minutes, I would think. Only got one thing to figure out. Everyone good? All right, gang. you need me, just hit the help button. I'll come a running. Otherwise, we'll see you back here at bottom of the hour. All right, good deal, good deal, good deal. It's funny. We started with 12, down to 9. It's amazing. Amazing how that happened. Oh, well. Onward, right? Onward. So let's talk about this. Let's work through this. So this is the top half of tab 2. So I asked group 1 where that value of the improvements came from. Okay, so there's $15,360,000 in that box that I have circled. What I want to know is reverse engineer this for me. Tell me how that was calculated. So that was Bryce, Justin, and Logan. Who wants to take the stage?
I've got this bad boy. So 15,360,000 happens to be 80% of 19,200,000. 19,200,000 happens to be the purchase price plus the acquisition costs. It's the price of the purchase price, acquisition costs. Then the breakdown of improvements versus land was 80% improvements, 20% land. So you just take 80% of that 19,200, which is the price plus acquisition, and you get the value of the improvements.
Perfecto. Good job. Good job, Logan. So yeah, 19.2 happened to be what we paid for the property. It was also the original basis, right? That was the original basis. So we're assuming that Jack's going to buy this thing in an outright purchase. He's not going to do a trade. He's not going to gift it. It's not an inheritance, outright purchase. So Uncle says your basis in that instance is purchase price plus acquisition cost, 19.2. And then in the problem, it tells us that the basis between allocation basis between land and improvements is 80-20. We don't care about the 20, right? 20 scrap value. That's the Honda Accord, what it's worth at the end of 20 years when it's just rubber and metal and some worn out seats and some grungy floor mats, right? That's the scrap value. Can't do anything with that, but we can do something with the improvements. So we got $15,360,000 worth of something that we can do in the tax world. Good. Questions on that? Good work, guys. Right. All right. Group number 2. I asked this group to come up with, or to tell us, the rest of us, what line 10 represents. How was line 10 cost recovery of the improvement? So this is just further down on that form, on that same form. Further down on the form, line 10, cost recovery of the improvements. I see it's about a little bit under $400,000 a year, $393,830 to be exact for middle years, and then it's a little less in the first and fifth year. Who is our spokesperson, and how are you going to enlighten us with this one?
Okay, well, I guess I'll tackle it. Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you loud and clear, Jeff.
Okay, so we took the improvement value that was just created, 15,360,000, multiplied the first and the fifth years by 0.0246, non-residential, I think that's right. And then the middle 3 years, multiplied that figure by 0.0256, the same figure, to come up with 378.10 and 393.830. There was a question though, and it's a good one because I actually have it, and that is calculating the middle years is pretty easy if you can't remember, but what's the math behind first and the last?
Oh, I know. I love it. So yeah. So your point of calculating the first one, Jeff, is a really easy one, right? We know it's 39 years because this is non-residential. So if you can't remember that that percentage, all you really have to do is take what group one came up with, 15,360,000, and divide it by 39, right? If you divide it into equal 39 pieces, there's your number, right? So that's one way around the hill, one way around the mountain. The way around the mountain that we teach is take 1 divided by 39 to come up with 2.564, and then multiply that percentage by the 15,360,000. Either one will get you around the mountain. It's just we going around this way, or we want it the rest way. Now, your question is an excellent one, because you said, well, what about that? The math, how does the math work for the mid-month? Because why is it a little bit less in years 1 and 5? What's the logic there? Why is it a little less?
That's a mid-month convention, right?
Right. So even though we're saying we're buying it January 1st, the IRS says we won't care what day you're buying it. You're buying it in the middle of the month for taxing purposes, for depreciation purposes. So this is 15 days less than the full year. Now, in the old days, and when I say old days, I say prior to 2013 Tax Reform Act that happened, you used to be able to do the math for both of them, for both residential and commercial. So the way the math used to work was, if 2.564 is a full year, divide that by 12 in the 12 months, multiply it by 11.5, and you'd have the factor. And that still works for residential. So if I take 0.03636, divide that by 12, and then multiply that by 11.5, 3.485. So for residential, that math still works. Divide the full year percentage by 12 and multiply it by 11.5. You're probably saying, okay, cool. This will work for this too. So let me take 393,830 divided by 12 multiplied by 11.5, and I got it. You'll see that it is just a smidge off. They changed the math. I'm going to go on a bender now. They changed the math in 2013 for just the commercial schedule. So you remember on Tuesday, I showed you the actual full schedules for commercial and for residential. And I said, okay, if it's sold in June, or if it's bought in May, or if it's sold in October, this is the way this table works. The math changed for the commercial, non-residential only. And I will pay cash money to whoever can tell me why. I have asked everyone. I've asked every tax accountant. I've asked every lobbyist, every tax pundit.
IRS made a mistake and they didn't want to fix it.
Nah, you know what? I thought that. I actually thought that. But if you look at it, there was some thinking that went behind.
My instructor said on the last class.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I think because it's too deliberate. If you look at the math, because I've looked at this, I'm a little OCD, and I've looked at this countless times trying to figure out, okay, why did this happen? What was it a flub? Was it and the best answer I could get is it was just horse trading. You know, when you get down and everyone's tired and you've been lobbying and everyone's been grinding on everyone for months and months and months about a really voluminous Tax Reform Act, someone just threw this in. Someone just said, okay, how about we'll give you this? And there was just, there's a bunch of probably 1,000 or 5,000 gives and takes. And this was just a give or a take. And the best answer I got was from an accountant. He looked at me and said, because that's the number in the form. We do what the IRS tells us, and this is what the IRS is telling us to do. And that drives me crazy because I want to know the math, just like you all want to know the math. But accountants don't care. Accountants want to know what the taxable income is, and what in this instance, what the allocation of improvements is, and what the rate that they multiply that by. They don't care how it's created. They just want to know what the number is. So unfortunately, I don't have a good answer. The best answer I can tell you is there's 4 factors, right? There's the full year factor and mid-month for residential. And then there's the full year and mid-month factor for non-residential, for commercial. Write those 4 factors down. Just make sure you have somewhere on a sticky or somewhere at your disposal, you have those 4 numbers so you can refer to them. 3 of them you can figure out, right? 1 divided by 36 or 39 will give you the full year. 1 divided by 27.5 will give you the full year for residential. 1 divided by 39 will give you the full year for non-residential. But the one that the sticking one is this one right here, the mid-month for non-residential, the 11.5 month. The math doesn't work for it. So I went on my bender. 2.564 is the, or 2.4. See, I get confused. 2.485 is the full year. 2.461, I think, is the number. But yeah, so write it down. Okay, good questions. Good questions. On the exam, most of the time they'll give you the factors. So they've rewritten most of the questions where the factors will be given you on the problems. There'll be typically a little box on the comprehensive. I know for a fact they're all there, but there'll be a little box if you need the factors. There'll be a little box and say, okay, the full year and mid-month for residential is blah. The full year and mid-month for non-residential is blah. So it'll be a little matrix that's given you. But still, just to be safe, scratch them down. All right, good. Other questions? Okey-doke. All right, go to the third one. Our third group, which is now down to two, an army of two, Julian and Ryan. I asked you to tell us where cost recovery depreciation taken shown up in line 9 of tab 3. So we're now on the alternative cash flows worksheet. Where does that number come from? Reverse engineer that one for us, please.
Well, simply it's the total of all the cost recovery taken over the 5 years, which we saw in tab 2.
Yep.
And
That's it. That's
that's simply it.
It is that simple. It is line 10 of the previous worksheet, previous tab, cost recovery taken, added up. Year 1 plus year 2 plus year 3 plus year 4 plus year 5. Add them together. It comes up to line 9 on the next tab, cost recovery taken. You have taken $1,937,510 of cost recovery over that 5-year holding period. That's how much income you've sheltered. You sheltered almost $2 million of income from taxation, because that's what's really happening here, gang, right? Line 10 is being subtracted from line 7, NOI, to come up with line 15, real estate taxable income. That's what uncle can tax us on. So line 10 represents the beer that we're hiding. We're hiding $278,000 of beer in the first year, which means that we're evading or we're escaping or we're avoiding having to pay taxes on that number. So $278,000 is not being taxed at 37% in that first year. What's being taxed is what's left, $1,301,190. So it's reducing our taxable income, giving us a shelter. How much shelter do we get collectively over our 5-year holding period? The total of them all, $1,937,510. Good. Questions on that? Okay. Now, I am going to ask you all collectively a question. I don't want you to answer it yet. I want you to think about it for a minute or two. Some of you may see this as you're kind of looking at this screen, but I am going to point out, I'm going to circle another set of numbers, one in particular, and it is this one right here, line 17. Line 17, kind of got line 18 in there. That's okay. Just focus on line 17 for right now. Line 17, heretofore in your CSAM journey, has always been the same as line 9 until now. Line 17 is different than line 9. So let's look at what line 17 says. Straight line cost recovery. Well, I thought that they just told us, remember group 3 just told us that straight line cost recovery, line 9, is how much depreciation we've taken. How come line 17 is different? How come line 17 is not the same as line 9? How come it's not 1,937,510? Because that's how much depreciation we've taken, right? Add 5 years together. Why is it less? Recapture rate. expand on that price, please.
I remember this from 101. And so you take depreciation over the life of it, but then when you dispose, you have to pay that back or a part of it back. So you can't take it all from your gain. So you have to kind of so it's called a recapture tax. And so that's what that is, that 1.6.
Yeah, but that's down here though, right? That's down here in the real world, line 30. There's our recapture. We're recapture at 25%. So 418,758. There's our recapture tax. That's just that right down here in line 30. That's a check we're scratching an uncle. That's being recaptured.
Oh, then I don't know.
Yeah, okay, that's okay. That's all right. That's all right. Let's continue to look at this. Continue to let this roll around in your head a little bit. My question again is, why is line 9 and line 17 different? Because you've never seen this. In 101 and so far in 104, that number has always been the same. Line 9 and line 17 have always been the same. And we just found out where line 9 comes from. It is the total of line 10 on the previous screen, right? Add up all the depreciation taken each year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's how much depreciation we have been taken collectively over the 5-year holding period. Almost $2 million. Why is line 17 different?
Well, limited to gain must have
Deferred
something to
loan
do with
fees.
it.
Deferred loan fees.
No, this is no financing, without financing. So WOF stands for without financing. We got no debt in this game yet, and debt does not impact calculation of gain. So I heard someone else saying something. It was good though. I like thinking, keep thinking. I heard someone else say something in there.
Well, it's limited to gain, as it says, because I'm trying to think why.
Limited to gain. That
if
might
you-
have something to do
yeah.
with it. Can someone help Ryan?
I
out?
guess for
Ryan's
tax
focused on that
reasons.
word, limited to gain.
Taxes on, or the recapture on anything more than what you've gained.
There you go. Now we're starting to hit it. You can't be taxed on something that you didn't actually have a gain on, right? You can only be taxed. The IRS will only tax you if you had a gain. So in other words, if I make $50,000, the IRS can't come back and say, well, you know what, we're going to tax you on 100. I was like, well, wait a second. What do you mean you're going to tax me on 100? I only made 50. We're the IRS. We make the rules. You're getting taxed on 100. That doesn't work. You can only tax someone on the gain that they have. So why would this say we only have $1,675,030 of gain? Why is it? Why are the numbers? And that's right. That's correct. No fat finger flub. Make a mistake on this. That's right. That's the right number. $1,675,030. That's right. Look at what's going on above it. Line 12, sale price. Sell the property. IRS allows us to reduce that by cost of sale. Sale price minus cost of sale, line 12 minus line 13, as compared to the adjusted basis. And remember, I've been calling this all along Kelly Blue Book. So Kelly Blue Book was figured out up here in line 11. That's what the IRS says this property is worth at the end of the 5th year. In their eyes, it's worth $1,272,490. Why? Because it's lost value. How much value? About $2 million, right? It lost at almost $400,000 at a time, 2.485% every year. So at the end of 5 years, how much less is it worth? Just like that Honda Accord gang, bought it for 30, lost 10 over 5 years, and end of the 5th year, it's now worth 20. Buy the real estate for 19.2. Over 5 years, it's lost roughly $2 million in value. End of the 5th year, it's worth $17,262,490. Okay, that's Kelly Blue Book. Now the IRS says, oh, wait, you're hitting the sell button? No, okay. Well, let's see how you did with respect to how much we think the property is worth. Well, the market says 19,324 is what I sell it for. Well, IRS allows us that cost of sale. 19,324 less 386,480 as compared to the Kelly Blue Book, 17,262. So in other words, we are selling it for $1,675,000 more than the IRS says it's worth. Line 12 minus line 13 as compared to line 14 has a difference of $1,675,030. That's the gain that we actually had. Now, why is that happening? Why don't we have $1,937,510 of gain? Because that's how much depreciation we've taken. Why isn't that whole amount subject to recapture? Why is the only thing that's subject to recapture $1,675,000? Oh, the easy answer is that's what the math says, right? We put in line 12 minus line 13 minus line 14 equals that's the number. That's the easy answer. What happened with this asset? Does anyone remember it was a little bit different when we ran for the pension fund? We ran this analysis, the before tax analysis. This is going all the way back last week. Seems like forever ago, doesn't it? All the way back last week, I asked you this T-bar right here, the before tax T-bar, what looks a little different to you? Does anyone remember what looks a little bit different about this T-bar as compared to other T-bars we've always seen in our CCIM journey so far?
You sold it for less than you bought it for.
18,937,520 coming out the door 5 years down the road is less than what went into the deal at the beginning. We sold this for less than what we bought it for. We sold it for less than what we bought it for. Now, we still got to pay tax, right? We're still going to owe Uncle something. Even though we're thinking we lost money on this thing. Uncle said, no, 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 you didn't lose money because you sold it for more than our Kelly Blue Book. You made money. We gave you the benefit of depreciation. You sold it for more than what we thought that property is worth at the end of 50 years. How much more did we sell it for than what it said it was worth? $1,675,030. The IRS can't tax us on this whole amount because we didn't have that gain. We sold it for something less than what we bought it for. We had a loss. Now we had a gain on the asset IRS to the tune of $1,675,030. But the reason that line 17 is less than line 9 is because we lost money. FV is less than PV. Let's go back to our alligator T-bar. Remember I had this, let me clean this up a little bit here, gang. Let's clean this up a little bit. Clean up my mess. It's junk out of here. Okay, my alligator. That's my buddy. I got a guy I teach. Anyone know Carl Andernon? Anyone come across Carl in your CCIM journeys? He's a great guy. Carl, I teach with Carl sometimes too much. We drink too much bourbon when we teach together, but we have a good time. And Carl likes alligators because he's in Louisiana and they do make food and stuff out of Louisiana, fritters and all kind of stuff. So Carl calls this my alligator. So remember this thing that I had that little graphic and I said, okay, you buy something for up here and every year the IRS says it's worth less and less and less and less and less, right? And I said, then in the real world, we hope it's doing this thing. And I'm just going to put a dash line in here. We hope it's actually appreciating. And then the difference between line 12 minus line 13 as compared to line 14 is your total gain. In this instance, we're not selling it for something up here, right? We're selling it for something a little bit less than what we bought it for. Now, we've taken depreciation on this whole piece, right? What we bought it for, less what the adjusted basis is. But we're selling it for something a little bit less. We're selling it for this. That's our true gain, this piece. How much gain are we realizing? because we can't, Uncle can't tax us on the whole shooting match because that's not what we sold it for. We sold it for something less. If we would have sold it for exactly what we bought it for, then yes, 1,937,000, that would have been your gain. But we didn't sell it for what we bought it for. We sold it for 19,324 less cost of sale, less 386,480, 18,937,520. That is what we sold it for in the IRS's eyes, as compared to the adjusted basis, the Kelly Blue Book, 17,262,490. The difference between those two, 1,675,030. That's the gain that Uncle is recognizing in this transaction. Because in our eyes, we lost money. In our eyes, we lost some ground here. In the IRS's eyes, we still had a gain. It's just not the full amount of depreciation we've taken. So we still get to enjoy that shelter, that almost $2 million of shelter. But when it comes time to pay the bar tab, we don't have to pay back the full 1,937,510. We're only paying back taxes on 1,675,000. Why? Because we lost money. Right? You can't tax me, Uncle, on something, on a gain I didn't have. The only gain I have is 1,675,000. Why? Because we sold it at a loss. Now, if we would have sold it for something up here, if we would have sold it for something more than what we bought it for, then yeah, then you're going to get taxed on the whole 1,937,000 plus whatever appreciation you had. But that didn't happen here. That didn't happen here. FV was less than PV. Whenever FV is less than PV, your cost recovery is going to be limited to the gain that you actually had. Because remember, we talked about this last week. I said, when would you pay exactly zero? When would you have exactly no gain? So what's the number? What's the number? It's up here. It's up here on this sheet. What's the number that I'd have to sell this asset for in order to pay zero in taxes? Sale price minus cost of sale would have to be what? Tell me the number. Hit the chat box. In order to have no gain. What's the exact number I have to sell it for? It's up there. It's up there on that sheet. I'm looking right at it. $1,900,000 less. That's exactly right. That's one way to get there, Joe. $1,937,510 less, which would be this number right here, the adjusted basis. If I sell it, if sale price minus cost of sale was 17,262,490 minus the adjusted basis of 17,262,490, my gain would be zero. That means I'm selling it for exactly what the IRS says it's worth. I have no recapture, and I certainly have no capital gain. If I sell it for $1 more than that number, I'm going to have some recapture. But that recapture is only going to be $1. Let's say I sell this for $10 more. Let's say sale price minus cost of sale was 17,262,500. And the adjusted base is 17,262,490. In the IRS's eyes, I'm going to have, in that example, I'm going to have $10 of gain. I'm selling it for $10 more than the IRS says it was worth. In my mind, I got the crap kicked out of me, right? I got walloped, and I still got to pay taxes? Yeah, because the IRS says this is what it's worth. This is the adjusted basis. If you sell it for $1 more, you're going to have $1 of gain that's going to get recaptured. Questions, gang. How much fun are we having now? All right, good deal. So when we go down here into the real world, starting with line 23, sell the property, pay your broker, line 24, gets us the sales proceeds before tax, and now we pay Uncle. You'll see the only tax that Uncle's able to collect is recapture. 25% of line 17. That's all that uncle can capture because there was no appreciation. There was no capital gain. And the depreciation is limited to how much gain we actually had. 1,675,030 times 25% means that we're going to scratch a check for 418,758. And that's it. That's the only check we're scratching at sale because we had no appreciation. Can't tax me on something I didn't have. Why? Because I sold it for less than I bought it for. Stuff happens, right? All right. Good deal, good deal, good deal. All right. So we had this. The only thing I had to say about this, line 17, no. I mean, yeah, as long as you follow the math. I don't think there's any questions on the exam that have this being sold at a loss. I don't think you got it. You don't have to get into nearly this detail in the exam. I'm splashing over in the real world stuff because in the real world, you may sell stuff for a loss. And you may think, oh, you know what? I sold it for a loss. I don't have to worry about taxes. Oh, no. You don't have to worry about as much taxes. But if you're selling for anything more than the Kelly Blue Book, the adjusted basis, you do have to worry about taxes for sure. All right. Talk about IRRs real quick. And the big punchline here is the after-tax IRR is less than the before-tax IRR. Why? Because you paid the taxes, because these cash flows were eroded by taxation and this sales proceeds was eroded by taxation, right? We just saw it. Uncle took $418,000 out of us at sale because of taxes. So our before tax sales proceeds, 18,937, is greater than our after tax sales proceeds, 18,518. The difference is strictly taxes. So our cash flows, our PMTs are less as a result of the taxes paid, and our FV is less as a result of the taxes paid. PV didn't change though, right? Whether we're looking at this before tax or after tax, we've got an 18.2 in the deal, either way. So if we got the same amount in the deal, less money coming out of the deal every year, less money coming out of the deal at the end, our IRR has to be lower. And it is 5.7% as compared to 8.63%. Now we have this magical thing called effective tax rate. This is something that gave, I think it was Benita had a, was kind of trying to figure this out. The math's easy. Bigger minus little divided by bigger. Before tax minus after tax divided by before tax. When I do that math, I come up with an effective tax rate of 33.9%. This investor, Jack Nichols, is in the 37% tax bracket. Let's let that sit there a second. Let's let that sit there a second because now we're going to put financing in this on this thing. And we're going to see what happens once we put financing on. So we got this little matrix, and I know a lot of you have kind of filled this matrix out. So this is on leverage, no debt. This is what it looked like. Before tax, after tax yield, and this effective tax rate just means that 5.7 is almost 34% less than 8.63. Okay, if something costs $8.63 regular price and it's on sale for $5.70, how much less is it? 34% less on sale. Same thing here. IRR after tax is 34% less than the IRR before tax. All right. So now we're going to look at leverage. What's this thing look like when we put leverage on it? What's it look like when we put debt on it? We were given the leverage assumptions, right? We had this little table. This is on test 3.2. We had this little assumption said 70% LTV, 1.25% debt coverage ratio. It gives us the interest, nominal interest rate. It gives us the amortization period. It tells us there's a 10-year loan term, 2 points, 2% on the loan cost. So it gives us all the information to figure this out. But the bad thing is, the sad thing is the little workbook doesn't figure it out automatically. You had to figure out the debt by hand. Okay, so that's one little step that you had to do for those of you that did task 3-2. You had to figure out the debt by hand, but we can go through that, right? We know we're going to do both LTV and debt service coverage ratio. LTV 70%. That was the assumption. 19 million bucks. That's 13.3. Scratch that down. We know we also have to look at the income characteristics. Year one NOI for this deal, 1,679,200. Debt service coverage ratio is given to be 1.25. So the maximum annual debt service, 1,343,360. We divide that by 12. And then we do the second step of our dance and our CCM financial calculator, 20 years, 12 payments per year, 7.5% interest, solve for PV. And when we do that, we have a loan amount of 13,896. So we figured out both loan amounts using LTV and debt service coverage ratio. We take the lower of the two, 13,300. That's going to be the loan amount. So in the workbook, there was a little kind of a drop down where you can put that number in and put in the rest of your things, and then it'll do the calculations for you. So initial investment, we got 19 million in the deal, $200,000 of acquisition costs. If we look at this on a leverage basis, lender's going to charge us 2 points, right? That was the assumption. 2% of 13,300,000 is 266. So that's another thing we need to consider. But in exchange for that, lender's bringing a big old wheelbarrow of cash, 13,300,000 in a mortgage. So that means that this investor, Jack Nichols, will have in equity 6,166,000. That's how much money he'd have in this deal if he took the debt that was given to us. 19 million for the deal, plus 200,000 in acquisition costs, plus 2 points, 2% of 13,300,000. But then the lender's bringing that 13,300,000 to the party. So Jack's going to have the difference, 6,166,000. Good there so far? Good in the hood? All right, so there's this little box. This is the little box I was talking about. This drop down, you had, I think LTV was a choice, but you didn't have debt service coverage ratio, and it doesn't do the lesser of the two. So you had to figure this out. And how do you figure that 13.3? I just showed you. 70% of 19, that's LTV. And then the NOI divided by 1.25, divided by 12, put in 7.5%, put in 20 years, solve for PV. And we would see that the LTV is the lesser of the two. So you put in the amount, put in the rest of the terms, and then it will do the heavy lifting for us. And when I say heavy lifting, let's take a look at some of that heavy lifting. I am now on tab 5. So for those of you that still have that solution set, you can just kind of follow along. This is tab 5. Here's the top. Here's the calculation that I just did for you. Money in the deal. Purchase price plus acquisition costs plus loan fees minus mortgage. 6,166,000 is what Jack's going to have in this scenario with financing. That's PV. Notice our cost recovery doesn't change, right? It's still the same as what all the groups told me at the beginning, right? There's our 80% of the 19.2 basis. It's still depreciated over 39 years. It gives us the little factors right here. So we can, kind of know what the factors are, the percentage of the factors. But now this mortgage data gets filled in, right? There's the $13,300,000 mortgage. There's the monthly payment. There's the annual payment, and there's the 2 points. Now I can go down to the bottom part. Before I go there, any questions? Any questions on this top part? Okay, now I can go down to the bottom part. So now not only are we able to get a shelter for cost recovery, which again doesn't change. Just because we have financing on it doesn't mean the depreciation calculation changes. It's still the same as group 2 told us, right? All that's the same, 1,927,000 in total. A little bit less than $400,000 a year at a time. But we get 2 more shelters, right? They're not shelters, they're actually write-offs. Line 8 is interest. So that's the interest associated with that $13,300,000 loan. And then line 12 is loan costs. 26.6 Where'd that come from? How would I reverse engineer that? If I had to figure it out, if I didn't have this nice fancy Nancy whiz bang workbook to figure this out for me, if I had to figure that line 12 out, 26,600, how would I do that? What's the math? Who wants to reverse engineer that one for me? So
Well, it's the loan cost divided by the term of the loan.
Yep, that's exactly right. So the loan costs are 2 points, 2% of 13,300,000, 266,000 divided by term, 10 years. So 266 divided by 10 is 26,600. Excellent. So that's another write-off that I can take. So I'm getting 3 write-offs. I'm getting interest, line 8. I'm getting cost recovery, line 10. I'm getting loan costs, line 12. So my taxable income, or Jack's taxable income, drops all the way down to line 15, 287, 208. So even though the property's making almost $1.7 million in NOI that first year, what's subject to taxes shrinks all the way down to 287, 208. 37% of that number is line 16, and that drops down here into the real world. That is the check that Jack scratches each year. Questions so far, gang? Now we sell it. The good news is this whole shooting match up here, lines 1 through 19, nothing changes, right? We still have that little kooky thing going on with gain, limited to gain, even though we're taking $1,937,000 of depreciation. We're only being taxed on recapture on $1,675,000 because we're losing money. We're selling it for less than what we bought it for. So none of that changes when we put financing. But this is popping in. What do you think that means? 133,000. What do you think that's all about? Line 20, unamortized loan fees. I see a negative 133,000.
That's the loan cost that you took that you haven't taken yet.
Bingo. Bingo, Bryce. Our total loan costs, 266, right? The top half of the cash flow analysis worksheet, 266. Oh, what did I do there? Hello. How do I get out of this? Oh, this is going to drive me crazy. Okay, well, let me try getting all the way out, gang, and back in, because that's going to absolutely drive me crazy. Hold on. So exactly right. Bryce said you got $266,000 of income or of loan cost over 10 years. We've taken half of them, right? We've taken the first half, the first 5 years, but we haven't taken the second half. So Uncle says, you know what? I get it. I get that you, this is session 6, right? I get that you've taken $266,000 of loan costs. I get that you've been able to enjoy sheltering half of those, but you're not getting the opportunity to take the second half. So therefore, I'm going to allow you to realize those as a credit at sale. So these are a savings. These represent the second half, years 6 through 10, that we haven't had the opportunity to take because we're selling at the end of the 5th year. So if you kind of look at the math, you see that that $133,000 is actually shows up down the line in the real world right here, 29, which is 22% of 22. So it basically reduces my tax. Sometimes people get screwed up with the negative. When you subtract a negative, the result is a positive. So we're subtracting the tax in line 30. We're subtracting the savings in line 29. So the end result is our tax burden is lessened by 49,210. Okay, questions on that? Questions on the math there? All right, and there is our before and after tax leveraged IRR. 9.95% before, drops to 7.03 after. All right, so now this is our completed matrix. Lots of stuff to unpack here. I'm going to focus on 2 things. The first thing I'm going to focus on is the columns. this effective tax rate unleveraged means that the 5.7% IRR after tax is 34% less than the 8.63 before tax. Okay, so this as compared to this is 33% lower. When we apply leverage, when we apply debt, 7.03 as compared to 9.95 is 29% less. What's the math? Bigger minus lower divided by bigger. 9.95 minus 7.03 divided by 9.95 equals 0.293. 29.3% less. The only reason, and I said this probably about 5 minutes ago, the only reason that the after-tax yield is less than the before-tax yield is taxes. That's the only thing that's causing that IRR to drop. Taxes are being taken out of the cash flows. Taxes are being taken out of sales proceeds. But it's only dropping by 34% unleveraged and 29% leveraged. And remember, I said Jack is in the 37% tax bracket. So ladies and gentlemen, I asked you, why is this happening? Why is this occurring? What is causing this effective tax rate? What's causing Jack's dollars to be taxed at a lesser rate unleveraged and an even lesser rate leveraged as compared to his ordinary dollars? What's going on there? I'll give you a hint. There's three things. There's three things that's cooking. Who wants to take a crack? Who wants to take a swing?
Well, it's borrowed money, so there's the leverage.
Yeah, that's what's happening this way. We'll get to that. That's what's when we look at the rows, that's why that yield is increasing. My question is, why is the yield decreasing when we look at it from a tax perspective, when we look at it by measure of effective tax rate? Because Jack's ordinary tax rate is 37%. But every dollar in this investment is only being taxed at 34% with no debt. And every dollar in this investment is only being taxed at 29% when we put debt. Why? Why is that happening? What is causing that IRR impact to be less than his
That the
ordinary?
interest deduction.
That helps. That's a big reason for the leverage. Remember, look how much we're writing off. We are writing off between interest and loan cost over $1 million. So that's a big reason why the leveraged is so much less, because of that big write-off, huge write-off. $1,679,000 of income, of which we can write off $1.1 million or $1 million, or roughly $1 million, just because of the fact that we have a mortgage. Now, we get this write-off too, right? We get this as a shelter, isn't it? A write-off, it's a shelter. We didn't pay anything to get that, right? That's a shelter. So that's another thing that's in play. So we are delaying the tax impact just because of cost recovery to the tune of, whoopie day, right there, $1,937,000. That's how much less we're paying in taxes. We're sheltering $1,937,510 from taxes, right? Oh my goodness. Hold on one second, gang. Let me quiet her down. Go. Sorry about that. Usually she's in the other room. Usually she's in the room. And today she's here. Wild dog. So that's how much we're sheltering. Almost $2 million. So almost $2 million of income is being sheltered just because of depreciation. And then you throw in the loan write-off. Whoa. Now we're really getting some write-offs. Now, the thing is, though, we're paying back, though. That $1,937,000, that's only temporary. When we sell it, we got to pay it back, right? We're taxed on it. but at what rate? What rate are we recaptured for that shelter that we enjoyed for 5 years? We're paying taxes on it, right? Look down on line 30. $25. So that effective tax rate is a terrific way to kind of articulate the advantages of real estate. We get to shelter almost $2 million of income from taxes. When we do square up with Uncle, we're not squaring up at 37%. We're squaring up at a flat 25%. That's what's causing this to drop. And then, when we put debt on the property, we get those big old shelter write-offs for interest and loan costs. That's what's causing this to drop as much as it is. These are inherent advantages of real estate. You can't take depreciation on stocks. You can't take interest write-off on bonds. This is real estate, gang. This is U.S. tax code as it pertains to real estate. Inherent advantages to the taxpayer, for sure. Now, let's look this way. Let's look this way. What this says is the leveraged before tax yield of 9.95% is 15% greater than the unleveraged yield. When we put debt on the property, our before tax yield increases by 15%. When we put debt on the property, our after tax yield increases by 23%. Why? So let's talk about the math. A couple of people asked me about the math. The math is the same as the rate going this way, except it represents an increase. What this is asking, or what this is telling us, is 9.95 is 15% greater than 8.63. I'm making $8.63 an hour. I get a raise to $9.95 an hour. How much of a percentage raise did I get? 15%. What's the math? Bigger minus littler divided by littler. We want to know the increase. So what's the difference, bigger minus littler, as compared to the beginning, the littler, 8.63. If you do that math, 15%. Okay, so our yield is increasing when we put debt. Why? Why is that happening? Why is our yield increasing 15% before tax, 23% after tax when we put debt on the property?
There are more tax benefits with.
We are
leverage.
absolutely, that's why the after tax yield is stronger, is greater than the before tax yield, because of those tax benefits, those write-offs on interest, those write-offs on loan costs. But even without taxes, even look at it before. So look, I got a lot of scribble going on here, gang. I'm sorry, but look at even the before tax yield. Before we even consider that, it's still increasing by 15%. Why? The tax benefits, the interest write-off and the loan cost write-off, that's why it's increasing even more. But just even before tax, why is it increasing?
Depreciation.
No, that's a taxation. That's taxation. Think before tax, before tax. Why is it increasing? We talked about this on Tuesday. This is one of the things we talked about early on when we dove into module 4. We talked about a concept. Said, why do people want to put debt? What are the 4 reasons people want to put debt? They don't have enough money. They do have enough money. They want to diversify. They get a write-off. And there was a 4th one.
Leverage multiplies your.
Bingo. Leverage. Not just any kind of leverage. Positive leverage. The cost of borrowed funds is less than the free and clear yield. And this is where it all circles back around. This is tab 8. This is my favorite tab. I could spend all class just on this tab. The cost of borrowed funds is less than the free and clear yield. Well, what's the cost of borrowed funds? That's the 3-step dance. Figure out the loan payment at the stated terms and conditions. If there's a balloon, figure out FV. There's a balloon at the end of the 60th month, the end of the 5th year, there's our FV. 3rd step, deduct loan costs. We have them, right? $266,000 in loan costs from PV resolve for I/YR. So right there is our cost of borrowed funds, 8.02, as compared to the free and clear yield of 8.63. So we do have positive leverage. It's not as great as you may think. If you say, okay, I'm borrowing at 7.5% and the property's yielding 8.63%, I'm good. You're still good. You're not as good as you thought you were, right? Because your true cost of funds is 8.02. We still have positive leverage, maybe not as much as we had hoped, but we still have positive leverage. And it's that positive leverage that's driving the leverage yield up to, whoopie day, up to 9.95%. Positive leverage. It's a great thing. And our leverage after tax is even stronger. So that's when we had that, remember that one question, I said, I'll come back to that. And self-assessment question, the last one, question 6. Here's the formula right here. Before tax cost of funds, 8.02, multiplied by the reciprocal of the tax rate, reduce it by 37%, multiplied by the reciprocal, 68%. So our after-tax cost of funds is 5.05 as compared to the after-tax IRR. So we can see that we see our leverage is actually stronger after tax because of the interest deduction and the loan cost. So we have better leverage after tax as compared to before tax. And that's what this calculation shows us. Gang, way past what you need to know for the test. Yeah, you're probably thinking, oh my God, I got to figure this out for the test. I'm gonna scream. Yeah, I'd scream too. But real world, this is what makes a real estate investment tick. And this is why people love real estate. I can lower my tax rate and increase my yield by bringing a lender partner in. So I need to figure out how does that work? How much am I going to lower my taxes? How much am I going to increase my yield? And it all comes down to this piece right here, this tab 8. This is the magic of real estate. It looks like a bunch of scribble probably to most of you. But the more you let this kind of roll around in your head and simmer, this is a really, really powerful slide. All right, gang, we are coming down to it, Now, I am going to ask you, if you haven't done Hidden Lakes, kind of 3.1 and 3.2, do it. And then Pinnacle Towers, this is a multi-tenant office building that Jack is also considering. Use the same workbook. Or, just play around with the workbook. You're not gonna have the workbook on the test. You're not gonna have to be tested on the workbook. The test is not nearly that complex. Take around with the workbook, get used to it, because we're going to be using a similar workbook in case study 5. So the more you can take around with this workbook and see how it works, the better off you'll be able to maneuver through when we get to case study 5. But I'm going to ask you to do Pinnacle Towers, and we are going to introduce on next Tuesday, we're going to introduce a measure called capital accumulation. So capital accumulation is kind of the granddaddy of the measures. It addresses a lot of the shortcomings of IRR and of cap rate and of cash on cash. Okay, so capital accumulation. So we'll get into that. Now, the good news is for the weekend, there's a capital accumulation input as a part of that leverage analysis workbook. So right here, you need to make sure you have $20 million in tab 20 and line 29. And then, and these are assumptions that are given in the case study. Capital accumulation, Jack can earn 3% on any dollars between 0 and $500,000, 4% on anything between $500,000 and $1 million, 5% on anything over $1 million. So just plug in these numbers. So 500,000, 3%, $1 million, 4%, and then 5% in that last column. So after you get the rest of the workbook completed, go back in and plug this in. And then I want you to use that to come up with a recommendation. So here's your homework, gang, for Tuesday. Sometime prior to Tuesday on the discussion board, and I'll have a link there, I want you to post a recommendation, what Jack should do and why. Okay, what should Jack do and why? You're going to make a presentation to him based on your thoughts, what he should do and why. So to get there, this leverage analysis version 2.5, Do it, save it as Hidden Lakes, then change it to Pinnacle, save it as Pinnacle, put in those capital accumulations, and that'll give you the information you need to be able to make a decision. Because he has 20 million bucks. What should he do? What should he buy? Should he buy Hidden Lakes unleveraged? Should he buy Hidden Lakes leveraged? Should he buy Pinnacle Towers unleveraged? Should he buy Pinnacle Tower leveraged? What should he do? The workbooks will get you there. The workbooks are your guide to help give him the information he needs to make a decision. Questions, gang. Questions. Covered a lot in this one, huh? This is a robust case study, there's no doubt. Good stuff. Again, don't get freaked out. You're not gonna have to do anything like this or the exam. The exam is just gonna be little pieces parts. What's the effective cost of funds? What's the effective tax rate? That's the exam. Real world. This is real world. All right, gang, I am going to stop the recording. I will certainly hang around for any questions. Again, we're banging against the bottom of the hour. I'm sorry. I apologize. I kind of get on my benders. But good work. I appreciate everyone hanging in and hanging out and